Dana Stirling is a fine art photographer as well as co-founder and editor-in-chief of Float Photo magazine. She was born in Jerusalem of parents from London, England, and now lives in Queens, New York. Dana experimented with drawing and writing before discovering how much she enjoyed taking photos. She then found out she was following in the footsteps of both her father and grandfather, but she was the first one in the family to pursue photography seriously. Through her work, Dana explores very personal themes that surface from family relationships and dynamics, challenges with mental health, experiences of displacement as an immigrant, and how it feels to be and not belong in a space. Here's my conversation with Dana. I wanted to welcome you and thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get to talk about the work a little bit and just share a little bit more about it.
I'm looking forward to hearing about. So why don't I just lead us off by asking what got you started in photography?
So when I was younger, like teenager, I always wanted to do something creative. I knew that I wanted to do something, but I never like was able to find myself. For a long time, I tried to learn how to draw because my grandpa was amazing at drawing. So I wanted to kind of be like him, but I just didn't have the talent. And I tried to dabble a little bit with writing. I never felt that I was able to articulate it in like a genuine way. I felt like I was trying to mimic things that I've seen, or it never felt authentic. And then I got like a little digital pocket camera for my father, just like a, like a fun little digital camera. And I started taking it everywhere I went. And then I started like taking casual photos, but like with more intention behind them, like around my house, kind of thinking about photography. And I really started to really enjoy it. So that's when I decided that maybe it could be something that I should look into more professionally, in the sense like just to learn how to take photos in a more professional way. And that's kind of how I ended up going to do my undergrad in photography, and it really opened up this entire universe. But I think like I always joke with my dad that in a way it was kind of always in my DNA, because I found out years like after I already started my undergrad back in England, we had a connection to like a camera shop that my family owned for so many years. And my grandfather, he was a very avid photographer. He used to take like home videos and stuff like that. So my dad used to do black and white dark room when he was a kid. So it kind of somehow ended up being that it was something that we kind of shared as a family, this kind of passion for it. But I was the one to kind of take it to a more, I guess, serious avenue, less like a hobby family photography.
Something that you said about when you first started taking photos with intention, was that in the particular subject matter or places or like what was it that your intention was leading you to?
Yeah, I think when I say intention is that it becomes something that you're more aware. Like, when you take casual, candid photos of friends, it's almost like automatic. Like you're not really thinking of the act of photography. You're thinking of the act of, oh, this is really cool. I want to document it. And I think for me, the shift was when I started looking at things in a different way, where I wanted to photograph them. I wanted to take the moment to photograph, and then I wanted to see how to photograph them. If I wanted to do macro, if I wanted to do wide shot, like I was trying to think of how to take a photo of this subject matter that I was interested in, and what would be the best way to do it, and kind of thinking about shapes and colors and almost like the feeling that photography can bring from a photo. And I started looking at the photos and thinking if this is good or bad. And I think that's when things in my mind shifted to where photography became something I want to learn how to do because I felt like there was like a need, right? Like I felt like I wanted to take a photo of something and then I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the language, I didn't have the ability to create what I was trying to do. And I think once I was able to learn even like just like basic photography, like what's a shutter speed, what's ISO, all of these technical things that are very basic to us photographers now. But once I was able to kind of learn that, it really opened up like a whole universe. And then I got my first little DSLR camera and I experimented even more. And then I went to school and I quickly shifted to analog photography at all. So I completely ditched digital and converted to analog. Yes, I've been doing that ever since.
The themes that you explore through your work are extremely personal. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the types of photos or what you capture through your photos?
Yeah, sure. So I think really from the beginning of my journey with photography, I kind of tend to lean inwards in the sense that I always wanted to explore this idea of family and the family connection, dynamics with my family, and exploring this idea of like being an immigrant to a family of other immigrants and this feeling of displacement, right? That many of us feel in many ways. So I kind of like in undergrad wanted to explore this idea of this family connection that I felt was very challenging. I never really felt deeply connected to my family, but also still connected to them, and it just felt very odd sometimes to be in a place where you are almost like you have to be in a place, but you feel very displaced in it, in this. Because I didn't want to photograph the people, right? I didn't feel the connection by photographing people. I started looking around my house and what it meant to be in this space because I felt very confined by it. I felt very lonely in it. I felt almost like very defined by this house. I was born in Israel. I grew up in Israel, but my parents are originally from the UK. So I have this home where we speak English in the house, but outside is a very different culture, that very different type of people. My parents, it was always hard for them to really integrate into the local environment. So the house became almost like a little bubble of like a different culture, a different universe. I had to belong somehow in both, inside and outside, and I couldn't find myself in either. I never felt, British enough for my parents because I was born in a different country, right? So I didn't have the accent, I didn't have the mannerism because I wasn't like the first time I ever visited London was way teen years. So I really didn't have any real connection to the UK. And then I'm living in an environment that's very opposite than of London. So again, I just couldn't find myself in these places. So that's really where still life came into play because I really started to look at the objects and the environment that is surrounding me, and in a way it felt overwhelming to be almost like buried in all of these things. So I tried to find comfort in them instead of finding misery, kind of like sadness in them. So I started documenting still life and just exploring family archives and just the notion of a family album and what does it mean when you see someone in a family album and he's completely anonymous to you. You don't even know their name, you don't even know their like personality, you don't know anything about them, but they're kind of forced on you because they're a family member, they're a part of your history, and what's the importance of that? So those are kind of things I started exploring in my early years, and then as my photography journey progressed, I started to understand more about myself and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And that kind of led me into the most recent project, which is Why Am I Sad, which really kind of tackles the notion of living in a house where your mother has mental illness and suffers from clinical depression, and how that affected me and how it shaped me, and it kind of forced me to kind of deal with my own mental health and my own struggles.
So the very personal themes. Did you continue to explore that through still life?
I think, yeah, I think for me, when I document still life, it's like a portrait. It's like a self-portrait. So, even if I'm taking a photo of something seemingly random, on the surface doesn't look personal, right? It can be a barn in Pennsylvania, right? I think for me, when I photograph still life, I try to almost like envision myself through these objects and through these moments, and they become surrogates to myself. And that inherently becomes personal because it comes from a personal place of self-exploring and self-identity and understanding my own self. So it's almost like projecting towards these objects.
So what was the process like? So you have a photo book specifically around that project. Why am I sad? And what was the process like as you were selecting which photos and the order of the photos in terms of what that told you about that journey, at least through the scope of the book?
It was interesting, the process, because I could technically choose images from any period of my work. Because, like I said, like I feel like all of my images since the beginning kind of bleed into each other, and they're all kind of connected undertone of sadness and family and connection. So technically, all the images could have been in the book. For me, I kind of wanted to be more deliberate with the images that I selected for this project because I wanted them to almost reflect the time period of where I had this shift in my brain where I started thinking about it, thinking about my mental health, thinking about why I'm photographing the way I'm photographing, why I'm so connected to these objects, why I feel sad, and why it's hard for me to photograph, and why photography is something that I love and it is very helpful for me, but it's also something that gives me a lot of anxiety and a lot of almost like a burden. So I think when I started thinking about these questions, it was kind of in the area of 2019. So I wanted to pick images that reflect mainly those years where I something clicked in my head where I started really being more intentional with this question of why am I sad and really thinking about it. There are a few photos in the book that kind of made it that are from 2015 and 2017, and I wanted to include them specifically because they were very important to me. Like they just had a deep meaning. For example, one of them was from 2017 is the toy deer that's like tilted on its face. And I always said that it was a self-portrait. And I just remember so vividly the moment of taking that photo when I was crying. I was just going through a lot at that time, and I felt like just like how that photo is like tilted, out of balance, disoriented. And I think I wanted to include that the feeling of that intentional moment of like you're understanding what's happening to you and you're finding a way through photography to articulate it. And that's a little bit kind of what the book is all about. Finding a way to articulate sadness and articulate this struggle with mental health.
There's something about the way you were talking about the image of the deer where I thought it's such a wonderful opportunity for people who see your work to just let go, allow themselves to have an intuitive response. When I just looked at images on the website, which is not even as powerful as looking at them in your hands, they are very visceral. Like they evoke a lot of emotion. And so I think it's a wonderful gift to be able to help people, observers who pick up your book or look at your images, to tap into that part of themselves that they might not have the words for, but just give them space to kind of like feel anything, something, something really strong from visual only, no words.
No, absolutely. I absolutely agree, and thank you so much for saying that. That's what I hope, the work can provide for people because it's kind of the same thing I'm going through, right? Because I am also struggling to articulate this feeling, right, of just this overwhelming like sadness that can come over me, right? So it's something that's so elusive and it's hard to explain. And even the photography doesn't do all of the explaining. But I think for me, it was just allowing myself to be like, okay, this is what's happening. How can I use photography to talk about it for myself and have it be a lifeline for me? And then hopefully people can take something from it. If it's just enjoyment, if it's just, oh, super pretty, that's great, or if they feel something really deep from it. Because there's something in this intuition that is just like natural, but it comes from a very visceral place of this emotional sadness. And I think because I photograph from a place of just being me, I can only be myself. So every time I take a photo, it's almost this, this cloud of sadness always just kind of follows me around, regardless of what I try to do. So I think the book is really about almost embracing this sadness and be like, okay, if it's always there, I'm not gonna hide it. I'm not gonna be ashamed of it. Let me just almost celebrate it. Almost just like, okay, it is what it is. How can I um just document it and bring it to people? And I think the hope is just to have people think, right? Like even if people get confused or people don't fully know the whole story or they don't understand, like just take a moment to like be with that emotion and kind of allow it to be what it is. I'm not trying to dictate how people see the work. I want it to be my journey, but it has to be also their journey when they look at the work and look at the book too. I think it's always fun to see how people react differently to the same photo, like for example, the pink balloons in the wind. To me, that's a very sad photo. Like I look at that photo, I'm like, it's heavy. And I've had people tell me it's their favorite photo and they see a lot of light and brightness in it. So I think it's interesting and it doesn't make the photo, in my opinion, any different because they saw it in that way. I think that's the conversation, the how mental health is different for other people, how sadness and how anxiety and all these emotions can reflect differently in people. And it's all valid and it's all okay. We can just talk about it, have the conversation, and learn something new about it. I think that's kind of the goal of the book, just to have a honest conversation about it.
uh, Sort of desperately remember the Russian, I think it was Tolstoy or somebody who said that like kind of like happy families are boring. Every happy family is happy in the same way, but unhappy families are all unhappy in their own unique ways. And so there is something different about, I think, about exploring the dimension of sadness than happiness. It's just a more complex, multidimensional series of experiences that warrant a deep exploration, awareness of, and openness to, because it's a lot harder to be open to your sadness than it is to be open to your happiness. So,
Yeah. And I think for me, I find that the biggest challenge when talking about how people react to the work and how they read the work is, you know, I think we're kind of conditioned to think about depression and sadness almost in this like black and white version, right? Like where everything is dimmed down neutral, heavy, things in the shadow, almost like everything is hidden away. So very often we have to illustrate sadness or depression. It can come out looking like that, like black and white and heavy and shadows and all those kind of metaphors, right? And here comes my project, and it's very vibrant, very colorful, leans into this idea of humor and pretty, right? Like things being beautiful, in addition to being sad. And I think sometimes is what's challenging for people that, but that's really the core of my work. Because, I walk around on Earth seeing the same things everyone are seeing. Like I see color, I see beautiful things, I see sad things, and my world doesn't change visually because I'm looking through this glass of sadness, right? So when I'm looking at purple flowers with the red reflector in them, right? Like I'm seeing the beauty as much as anyone else, right? But I'm coming from a place that I also have this burden of sadness. And it's just there. It's lingering around, but it's not dominating. For me, it's not either or. It's not like it's or sad or happy. It's everything. It's both because that's again, that's how I walk through life. Like it's this duality of something that you carry around you, but you still have to like you're still living your life. You're still going to work, meeting friends. You still have to do daily chores. So you're still functioning alongside this sadness. And how do you cope with that feeling of having that with you all the time? So I think that's why my photography has this play of color and humor and just like this irony and paradox of emotions that can all coexist at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's just something so interesting about being able to help people. I mean, I think I said this already actually, but just providing these opportunities for people to tap into sadness and not try to just go through it. So
Right.
it's not like we're always on a journey to, oh, I'm feeling sad. Well, I better get over that real quick so I can feel happy again. It's like, I love the idea that they're kind of both all they're both happening at the same time. And the way I see something is going to be colored in some way by maybe my emotional state, but to allow myself to see the beauty in something that's reflecting sadness, it should be just as precious as seeing the beauty in something while I'm reflecting in some way my happiness. It's no less beautiful, it's no less touching or important or valuable or and I'm not making light of serious, mental health issues and stuff. I don't think that's just like a walk in the park and oh, sometimes we're happy and sometimes we're sad, but I think it's good. You can help everybody tap into somehow their own sadness and kind of see some beauty in that. I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, I think, mental health is a hard conversation. We never want to offend. We always want to be there for people. I would never want someone to, feel discouraged or almost like unheard because of my, work. I think the project is not about diagnosing or telling people how to live their life or how they should struggle or not struggle with their mental health. It's really just about having a conversation, opening the door, allowing people to feel comfortable with sharing this side of them. That was kind of the biggest struggle I had for many years. I didn't want to really talk about this side of myself because I was afraid that it would impact me in my professional life, right? Like, what would people think? Oh, like she has mental health like challenges, so does that mean she can't do X, Y, Z? So I was just afraid, and I know now that it's rooted in a lot of shame and guilt that is very internal, and I don't think people actually think that way. I think it makes people hide away and be afraid to talk about it. And the project is really just to have a way for people to think about it. maybe they can feel like less alone, maybe. It's about just like embracing whatever it is you have and finding ways to deal with it that are beneficial for you and your life.
I'm wondering if we can switch tracks now back to that other thought that what you shared I thought was so interesting, which was seeing your work as a photographer as a burden at the same time as it being your passion. I'm assuming like it's both those
Yeah.
things.
So I think I would consider myself a very slow photographer. Like I don't take that many photos. And for many years, there was like long periods of times where I didn't even pick up a camera for like months. Especially when I was a student, you always hear about like the great photographers of the time, like, how they could cross a walking crossing and take 10 rolls of film from one side to another, right? Like idea of like you have to almost be obsessive about your work and your craft. And if you're not making work, you're not an artist. If you're not making enough work, then you're not good enough. Almost like feeling like volume and intensity of making work makes you an artist. So I kept struggling with it because my work is so tied to this side of me of my emotion and my depression. There was just like times I could not get myself to photograph. And if I did photograph, it wasn't anything I felt good about. But then when I wasn't photographing, I just kept thinking, like it just like every day I was like, I didn't photograph today. I didn't photograph today. I didn't photograph today. So every day that passed, like it almost became harder to go back to photography because I was like, well, I didn't take photos for 6 months. What am I going to take a photo of? I think that's where the burden aspect of it came. It's just like this a feeling of not doing enough, not being enough, self-doubt, comparing myself to others and what I think artists should be or how they should act and how their life should be. So it's challenging. I don't know if I'm alone in that feeling or if other people feel the same, but that's why I always find photography to be, such a great escape for me, but it's also like it's just my one of my biggest anxieties in life is just
Well, I would tell you I can relate to that. Not as a
good.
photographer.
Yeah, I'm sure many artists can have their own version of that feeling.
Which sort of makes me want to ask you, and if this is if it's too personal or you don't want to answer it, it's fine. But I know that feeling of the cycle where it starts to get self-perpetuating, and so if you get off track one day and then the next day, the weight of that day is on you, so the second day is harder, and then the third day you've got, and so I know what that feels like. And what do you do then to kind of rise out of that again and say, okay, I can move forward now and take photographs today.
I'm lucky because I have a partner who's also a photographer, and we try and go as often as we can to photo trips. Like sometimes it can be like a day or two, but once a year, like we make it a point to go to a big trip of like 10 or so days, and we go and we travel and we go to photograph. Like, we always joke that like our vacation is the hardest work we do is like because we go to photograph and it does become very intense and very like emotionally, charged. So I think I'm lucky because I think if I almost sometimes use him as an excuse because I'm like, okay, we need to go photograph, right? It's both of us. So I have to go with him because he also wants to photograph. Like I use him as an excuse, even though like he would never like make me do anything. But like I use it as like a way to motivate myself to be like, okay, we're going. Even if I took one photo a year, as long as it's a photo I love, I'm okay.
To learn more about Dana and her work, be sure to visit danastirling.com and at Dana_Stirling on Instagram.